left, no right, especially no left with high churches organized, just people against elites with a new master signifier, dignity. Okay, I think dignity is not a bad word, because the term is appropriate insofar as it makes clear that protesters are not protesting just because of some particular material demands. Dignity has this universal dimension of freedom and emancipation. However, my problem is that then what dignity means, and I totally support Podemos, but as I've written already 2 years ago when it all started with Indignados, how I read in detail their programs, and just to provoke them, I've written that if you take their program literally, even every honest fascist would have subscribed it. No, everyone, dignity, just society, money should serve people, not people money, and so on and so on. These are generalities. The problem is, what do you do with it? I'm not saying now, in a stupid way, that we should abandon dignity and say in a stupid, direct way, class struggle or whatever. Dignity is a good motto to mobilize people. We should just fight for what dignity will mean. The point is, as my friend, although we were enemies personally for reasons unknown to me, who recently died and who was even a kind of official philosopher of Podemos, Ernesto Laclau, I still have great appreciation for him as a political thinker, what he called struggle for ideological hegemony. You know, we have big words, dignity, democracy, honesty, freedom. The problem is, what will they mean? And here, the struggle begins. Now, let me really begin. When President Obama was accused of irresponsibly introducing class warfare into American political life, the billionaire Warren Buffett snapped back in defense of Obama. There is class warfare, all right, but it's my class, the rich class, that's making war, and we are winning. End of quote. So, if class warfare is still anathema in the American public discourse, this repressed topic is returning with a vengeance in Hollywood. This is why I trust, up to a point, Hollywood. You know, when friends tell me, oh, you are still a stupid old Marxist class war, I tell them, but what are you talking about? Look at recent Hollywood blockbusters. They are all about a post-apocalyptic, extreme class society. Hunger Games, Elysium, and so on and so on. So even Hollywood senses that if we allow the present development where our societies, even worldwide, are spontaneously moving, if we allowed this development to just go on, I think we are approaching some kind of new apartheid authoritarian society. It will not be the old fascist authoritarian society, which is why whenever left-wingers, when confronted with something they hate, and maybe probably they are right to hate it, when they use words like neo-fascism and so on, I immediately become suspicious, because, you know, they use big old words as filling the gap of the lack of their analysis of what really goes on today. I don't think, for example, Putin, I oppose to him, Putin in Russia, that he is simply a neo-fascist and so on and so on. We are now approaching a new type of authoritarian state, which still allows you all your personal freedoms, abortion, sexuality, whatever you want. At the individual level, you are fully allowed to follow all your idiosyncrasies and so on and so on. But I think, so what's the problem? I hope you saw an old film which was the first to detect the trend where we are moving, John Borman's Zardoz, from back 1974 with, he was still young then, Sean Connery and so on. It depicts again a future society where the rich elite lives in so-called vortex, a secluded community of civilized beings protected all around by an invisible force shield. And is this not the result of the fall of communism? That there is a universal new world order, but the paradox of the fall of the Berlin Wall is that new walls are emerging all around. United States versus Mexico, West Bank, even Europe there in the south, Spain protecting it from Africa, whatever. And I claim that this is the paradox of global capitalism. Yes, commodities circulate freely, but people circulate less free than ever. I'm even ready to go a step further and claim that it's clear that today the global capitalist order can less and less afford even the good old, let's call it naively, bourgeois democracy. It cannot be for everyone. More and more we have the division of those who are in, those who are out. Here I rely on my right-wing friend, but he is not an idiot, you should nonetheless read him, the German philosopher Peter Sloterdijk, who wrote an interesting short book translated into English, I don't know if it's in Portuguese also, In the World Interior of Capital, where he just develops this metaphor of a globe, claiming that global capitalism doesn't mean only globally in the sense of all-encompassing, but also global in the sense of a globe. We privileged are in, and being in means that you think you see everything, but you don't even perceive the globe, the limit which separates you from those outside. And it's not only the radical outside, like way back there in, I don't know, Chinese Gulag or in Indonesia, these cheap factories where ordinary workers are exploded. I remember I was in Italy in December 2013 when something, maybe you remember it, strange happened. At least 7 people died when a Chinese-owned clothing factory in suburb of Firenze, a small town called Prato, burns down, and then analyzing it, surprised Italians noticed that in the very suburb of Florence, Firenze, they had slavery. Thousands of people of illegally immigrated there, they immigrated there. Chinese were working in half-slave conditions and so on and so on. So, again, and if you go, for example, to Los Angeles, you have the same experience. Just remember when you land in Los Angeles. The airport, the international big one, LAX is the code, is above in the area called Inglewood. You know why? Because it's a slum area, and who cares if the landing plane makes sounds and so on. But the point is that, you see, for you, Los Angeles is, if you go as a tourist, you know, maybe Santa Monica, Venice, Hollywood, down, you simply don't see, you don't notice that. That's our problem today. Maybe it's no longer the classical class division, but it's in a way an even stronger division, which also thinkers like Agamben tried to conceptualize. A division between those who are in and those who are out, to put it very simply. And so how to be active in these conditions? What to do? Here, I agree with the term Podemos. Yes, we can, but we should be aware of all the ambiguity of how this slogan can function today. Because now I will repeat an analysis done by my Slovene-Lacanian colleague, you mentioned her, Alenka Zupancic, who noticed how, what is possible and what is impossible is divided in a very strange way today. On the one hand, in the domains of technology, personal freedom, sexuality, almost everything is possible, or so they tell us, you know. Through new inventions, biogenetic or others, we will be able to live almost eternally. We have this tech-gnostic dream that we will become a software program, just downloading oneself from one to another material embodiment. Sexually, you do whatever you want, and I know here some extreme cases to amuse you. It shocked even me, an old pervert guy. When I was in New York, I couldn't believe it. I learned that there, in some radically experimental sexual circles, something became fashionable. And okay, it's not that every man is doing it, but it's a small fashion, many are doing it. A surgeon can cut your penis into two, so that you have two penises, and then there are techniques that you can penetrate two women at the same time. Okay, you can do. There are some small problems with urination, but but the point is that here the idea is you can do it. You know that the Virgin boss already tries to do flights into space. Okay, if you have money, of course, everything can be done at this radical level. But on the other hand, so everything becomes possible. But if you want to raise taxes 1%, they tell you, oh, sorry, that's not possible. So it's a nice paradox. What is possible, what is not possible. And I think that this is how I see Podemos. It's not, no, we can do even more than ruling ideology is promising us. No, it's, we should do those much more modest, lesser things which are effectively prohibited, today prohibited in the sense that they are presented as impossible. And I'm not joking, like, the point is not just to do them. If you do them, you are immediately punished by international capital. And another note, that a little bit, maybe I don't totally agree, disturbed me in the speech by Iglesias. You know this fashionable hatred of Germany. I'm always afraid when you, I'm not saying the Germans are good guys, but nonetheless, don't blame an external enemy. The problem is the global system, you know. Okay, but what I want to say is that, so this is how I see this Podemos. In a paradoxically much more modest sense. And again, yes, that's what I wanted to say. This is the truly difficult thing to do, because, okay, you raise taxes, then you are isolated by international capital, how do you do it? And it's not that there are simply bad guys out there. No, I mean, the problem is in the system. It's a big problem, how to really break out. At the same time, the problem is how, although we live apparently in an era where we imagine unlimited things, how our political imagination has decayed. This makes me very sad. My friend, whom you mentioned, I think Fred Jameson, says this years ago, and I always use it, how today it's easy to imagine the end of the life of Earth, asteroids defeating us, but it's almost impossible to imagine just a radical change in capitalism, you know, like the world can disappear, but capitalism cannot disappear. And recently I got a funny, disgusting at the same time, example of this limitation. I found on the internet a report on how scientists are developing, it's still in the utopian stage, but nonetheless, special drugs which will distort your sense of time. So that in reality, only, let's say, 10 minutes will pass, but you will experience it as 100 or 50 years. Okay, I will not engage into is this really possible or not. I don't care, I don't know. But what really depressed me is that the researchers who did it, what did they offer as an example of practical use of it? The immediate example was prison terms. Like, let's say I am young specialist in something and I do some nice killing and I get 50 years of prison. Wouldn't it be much more productive for society, you know, to give me those drugs so that subjectively I will experience it as if I am in prison for 50 years, but in reality it will be just 10 minutes so that I can be useful then, I don't get out all for society. And okay, again, maybe I'm an old pervert man, but my first association